What's up, Spartans? Batman from TST Gaming here, keeping you updated with everything Halo. And today we're going over our review of Episode 4 of the Halo television series, Homecoming. But before we get started, please subscribe for more Halo content. Spoiler warning for those who have not seen this episode. We're going to do this particular episode a little bit differently due to some feedback we've gotten in the comments from previous episodes to make it more of a review and not as much of a recap. So, first thing we're going to talk about is things that I liked about this episode. I liked the stuff with Halsey and Chief, that she was trying to keep him from discovering too much about his past while letting him access just enough memories to help him find the artifact. I thought that was really well done. I liked the scenes that we saw with her and the coin, which is something that's iconic from the lore of the original timeline. They did change it up a little bit, which actually makes it a little bit creepier because instead of meeting him in a playground, she meets him at his own house. So I liked that. I liked seeing that Silver Team was getting a little bit more screen time this time around. That Kai actually got a lot of development, a lot more than I thought she would at this point in the story, because she saw Chief in the last one removing his inhibitor, and so that she did it to herself. She changed her hair color a little bit, and she showed a little bit more flair as a character and having a personality, which I really love seeing, especially when it came to her with Miranda. At first she kind of gave attitude, but when they got to kind of sit down, just the two of them, and they were, she mentioned that they're kind of like sisters because they both came from Halsey. I thought that was a really nice scene, and it developed Miranda as a character, developed Kai as a character. Whether or not we're going to see the other two Spartans of Silver Team remove their inhibitors yet remains to be seen. My guess is yes, that it'll be kind of from Kai telling them, hey, I feel like a whole new person. I feel like I'm a human. So Riz and Vanek, I would not be surprised if by the end of this season, if not in the next couple episodes, we'll have theirs removed as well. I thought it was a little odd that while Cortana was first seen in the last episode, she wasn't as big of a character in this episode. She was still important in terms of trying to help Chief regain some of his memories, but it just felt like she didn't have as many lines. So to me, that was kind of a negative. Some things I wasn't too fond of in this episode was the stuff with Kwan Ha, which I know that a lot of people on Reddit and on Twitter haven't been as well received with her character arc as I'm sure the showrunners have hoped. And so far in the show, I've been fine with it. I'm like, she's a human. She kind of helped Chief to discover his own humanity and put him on that path. And then she was with Soren, and then she talked Soren into taking her to Madrigal. I thought as soon as they got to Madrigal that they were going to run into Maquis, the Human Covenant woman, who wasn't even in this episode except for a brief flash, which I thought was a little odd because Maquis' development as a character is something that I've been really liking, specifically after the last episode. So to me, that was a huge negative to build this character and then not have her be in it. And Kwan Ha's story in this episode was way too long. It felt like it was more her episode than any other character, and I didn't time anything. It's just how it felt from a first time viewing. So I hope they kind of tone it down less. I know that her story and the story of Madrigal is tying into the larger narrative, and that's fine. They need to speed it up a little bit and focus more on the Chief and the Covenant, because so far in the show, there hasn't been a whole lot of human versus Covenant engagements. I feel like this show so far is telling a lot more stories than I originally thought it would do, which is great, but I feel like they do need to rein in a little bit to keep those stories a little bit more evened out. Show us more of Silver Team and Chief and the Covenant and Maquis and Halsey and Cortana, but the Kwan Ha stuff can be toned down a little bit. But I do feel like it's going to lead up to an explosive finale for the season that maybe Madrigal will get glassed by the Covenant. I really like some of the shots they did in this episode with the Master Chief inside his helmet, looking out, as he's looking around his room and his house and kind of reliving some of his memories. I really liked that stuff. And I liked that it looked like Dr. Halsey was actually getting annoyed with Master Chief in this episode. Before she's like, hey, let's kind of see what happens when he doesn't have his inhibitor. And now she's kind of like, this is not working out like I thought it would. And at the very end of the show, Miranda says something along the lines of she doesn't like things that she can't control. And that does feel like a very Halsey thing, because she's always pushing to have humanity meet their potential, which again was kind of referenced in this episode by Miranda. So I think we're in for a treat for the rest of the season. I feel like this episode was actually not as good of an episode. It's probably my least favorite so far. The biggest highlight for me was actually Kai this episode. Seeing her and her holding a needler and they're talking about the weapons and all that was probably the best parts of the episode. I am a little curious to know more about Halsey's assistant. I don't know what his name is, but the creepy one that tried to kiss the Flash clone of Halsey before she walked in. I thought he's a weirdo, and I wonder if he's got orders to supersede Halsey should the worst happen, but time will tell. Overall, I'd give this episode a 7 out of 10. They do need to focus more on the Human Covenant war. I understand that the artifact is kind of leading them to start finding out about Halo and whatnot, but send the Spartans on missions. Don't just have them on the ship kind of doing tests and things of that nature. People want to see the action of Spartans fighting the Covenant. Let us know in the comments down below what you thought of this week's episode. And that's all we have for today. If you did enjoy this video, please like and subscribe. Thank you for watching TST Gaming, and until next time, just play.